This is Bill Griffin. Welcome to Different Take Podcast. If you like this content, please subscribe, like, share, comment. Really appreciate you watching. Today I want to share a story that you won't see on the mainstream legacy media. It has to do with the math proficiency of students in the Baltimore City Public Schools. So this is from Fox 45 News, Baltimore affiliate. And it will start with a gentleman, his name is Giovanni Patterson, who ran for the city council a couple of years ago and as a Republican and lost. And I'll explain the pertinence of explaining him in a minute, but he also made news last year because he filed a lawsuit against the city school system because they're misusing funds and they're not educating the students. So in spite of all this, you'll see how dreadful their test scores are.
Fox 45 News is demanding answers about that report from state and local leaders. Our team coverage begins with Project Baltimore and a mother calling on someone to fix city schools.
As Chris Papps explains, this mother says major changes need to happen now or she's leaving.
Nothing up there for them. Nothing. They go there to get babysit for 8 hours and come home.
Nichelle Watkins is exhausted.
I feel like they don't care. It's not their children. They don't care.
After years of pleading for help from Baltimore City Public Schools.
Look around. I'm in public housing. I can't afford no $1,000 tutor from Sylvan, but that's what he needs. A tutor. How was your school day?
Pretty good.
Her son is in 4th grade at Johnston Square Elementary. For years, she says she's been trying to get the school system to hold her son back.
So in spite of all this public spotlight, because Fox 45 also reported on Mr. Patterson's lawsuit a year ago, and they've been on the city schools for some time, they still have 7% math proficiency, grades 3 through 8, and 0% in 23 schools, something like 2,000 students. I guess a lot of students weren't there that day to take the test, which tells me that number could have been much, much worse than, hard to believe it could be worse than 0, but you would think the students that could achieve proficiency would have actually been at school to take the test. That's the way I took that number. So one of the excuses, I'm sure, is going to be COVID and online learning and that sort of thing. But if you look at this map, this comes from the Maryland State Department of Education. Baltimore City schools are at 7, but adjacent counties are the county north of Baltimore City is 19%. The counties to the, which is 2.5 times better. And the counties to the left actually have the highest scores in the state, which are about 5 times higher. And then the county south of that is 23%, so over 3 times higher. So you can't claim COVID because they were experiencing the same thing. 1 year ago, this also appeared on Fox 45 Baltimore.
Blight, despair.
This chart was assembled by Baltimore City Schools and obtained by Project Baltimore. It shows the average GPA for every high school grade in the city, freshman through senior. In the first 3 quarters of this past school year, according to the chart, 41% of all Baltimore City high school students earned below a 1.0 grade point average.
So you go back a year and a dreadful report, and a year later, it's even worse news. Well, I think it's worse news. I don't know how you could get worse, but it's a great evidence for school choice. This is intentional. The school board, the administration, it's intentional that they're prioritizing other issues over and above academic achievement. That's that's how this happens. By the way, they're blaming the teachers because they're going to supposedly have more teacher training. I suspect a lot of this has to do with classroom disruption. If you've ever seen the television show The Wire, there's a season where there's a math teacher, public school, Baltimore, and they depict a lot of classroom disruptions. And if that's anywhere close to accurate, that's what's going on today. And if you read, and that was some time ago, the television show was quite some time ago, you would think that would have, just that television program in and of itself would have awakened people to the problems in their public schools, but no. So you can look online and do the research yourself. There's a lot of stories about violence in the city of Baltimore, and particularly 18 and younger. A lot of violence in the public schools and fighting and same kind of things that I've talked about in the school system in Gwinnett County. One of the things their school system does is they have what's called restorative discipline practice. I've talked about this on other episodes. This is a page on their website in regarding to restorative circles, BCP, and restorative practices for conflict resolution. So it's referring to Baltimore public schools. Restorative practices, intentional strategies that build on open, respectful communication to reduce conflict and repair harm have been at the heart of our school culture since 2007 with grants from OSI Baltimore and the Goldsmith Family Foundation. You look these up, the pretty left wing. We implemented the practice in our schools and we're the first schools in Maryland to use restorative practices. BCP classes begin each day with a circle, a time when students and teachers come together to talk about conflict, address concerns, offer words of praise, thanks or apology, etc. Anyone in a BCP school, child, teacher, parent, may ask for a circle. Yes, it's a constructive alternative to suspension, but restorative practices is much more. It's how we hold each other accountable for our actions, and how we build a community grounded in cooperation and mutual respect. And it's working so well that they can't have one student out of 23 schools achieve math proficiency at their grade level. The idea behind these circles is one kid could assault another kid and the victim has to sit down in a circle with the person who did this for no reason. This is also from their website. Restorative practices district-wide. A number of our schools have been using restorative practices for a few years and have seen positive change in relationships and school climate. Again, so positive that their grade point average last year, 41%, was less than 1. Because restorative practices work and because City Schools is committed to providing staff with opportunities to grow as professionals who successfully support students, the district has partnered with the Open Society Institute, that's the group that I was referring to before, to make sure every staff member learns how to use restorative practice over the next 5 years. So for 5 years, each staff member has to deal with this. The goal is for every school to use these strategies regularly so that every student has what or she needs to succeed. So what they're doing is they're prioritizing avoiding out-of-school suspensions at all costs to have either, one would assume, to have so much classroom disruption they can't learn math. This is intentional because you're prioritizing less important things than math. It says currently on any given day, nearly 25% of high school desks are empty, a 13-year high. Instead of being in school, police say many of the kids are walking the streets and committing crimes. Could the answer lie with Baltimore City Schools? This is also from Fox 45 News in Baltimore. This was done, however, the date of this report is 2017. So the people that are so insistent upon not suspending or removing students from class for disruptive or violent behavior, or they're perfectly fine with them just not showing up for school. So it's okay if you just voluntarily don't show up, but if you force someone to, or you ban them from coming to school because of their behavior, that's a bad thing. I'm confused. I'm confused as to how this could possibly help the student, but because you don't get to do this in any other sphere of life, I'm trying to teach students to grow up and become adults. And adults, you have to abide by certain things in the workplace, like attendance. But out-of-school suspensions are trying to avoid with restorative practices. It's creating mayhem. It's obvious. It's doing that in Gwinnett County. But they're also prioritizing a whole host of other things. And you have to assume that a lot of these teachers are political activists because, well, this was on their website. Students from Frederick Douglass High School's Law and Leadership Career and Technical Education CTE program found the answers in May when they participated in the inaugural Social Justice Boot Camp at the University of Maryland's Judge Alexander Williams Jr. Center for Education, Justice, and Ethics. The day-long event enlightened students about opportunities to amplify their voices for systems change through social justice advocacy. Each of the students at the boot camp picked a focus area: gun violence, voting rights, health disparities, climate change, or racial injustice, and joined intensive workshops led by professors and graduate students to understand the historical context of the issues as well as opposing views. Then the students developed action plans with a focus on achievable local goals that would lead to meaningful change in their communities. That's great. Instead of learning math, that's what they're focused on. So this is intentional. They're focusing on a lot of other issues instead of the students learning math. Math's logical. You have to reason. It requires some work. You can kind of learn how to talk naturally because you do. But reading and writing, maybe not so much for sure. But math, you got to put some. It's not easy to learn math, but they're focused on that as being a lower priority. You only have so many hours in the day, and if the students are that disruptive, why wouldn't you focus on the important things instead of these other things? And the answer is, I think it's an intentional. Prioritize these other matters. So these are the demographics of the school system. So you have 2022 to 23, 73% African American, 17% Hispanic, Latino, 7% white, less than 5% for all the rest. 60.7% of the students are, I guess they classify it as low income. 12% English learner. In other words, I guess 12% of the student body, English not their first language. So, and 14% official percentage of students with disabilities. So, 40% are not low income, but 0% out of 23 schools of the entire school system, 0% were proficient in math. The school has something like 6,000 students and costs $18,000 a student. Perverse incentive. The worse you do, the bigger the problem is, the more money. We need more money. That's the answer. It's a perverse incentive, but that seems obvious to me. You're spending $18,000 a student, and a lot of school systems don't spend anywhere near that kind of money. There are no public meetings of the board. They're done online. So they took advantage of COVID, I suspect, or maybe they never did. I don't know. But they do Zoom meetings. So this is my take on this situation. I've interviewed a couple of professors on this subject, which are on the channel. One's name is Peter Smegorinsky. One's name is Russell Skiba. I've listened to a lot of activists and read a lot about restorative practices. And instead of traditional discipline, the idea is suspension, out of school suspension, expulsion is last resort. So you're sacrificing the majority for the few. So you take, this is what I hear a lot of people saying about this though. You take a school in Baltimore that is almost all black and or Hispanic according to demographics, low income, and that 8-year-old in that school, there's no reason to think that they wouldn't have the natural ability as a school that is affluent, maybe in Martha's Vineyard. I don't know what the schools are like there, but I'm assuming wealthy people want to educate their children, and the school's probably good. Maybe it's a private school. And they have a high level of discipline, expectation of behavior, I should say, a high level of student behavior, high standard for academic achievement. And the folks that I talk to say this Baltimore school, they can't have what that other school has. And I'm just not buying that their natural ability at 8 years old is any different. So why wouldn't you apply the best practices that work and they get high achievement? But that's not what they say. When you talk to people, they say simply you cannot have what this affluent school, maybe it's predominantly white, student body demographic. It's not me saying this. This is what I hear them saying. You cannot have, the school in Baltimore can't have the same things that this other school has. They don't really get to explain why. So, what's happening in Baltimore City Schools is a great argument for school choice. And as you saw the gentleman at the beginning of the first clip, Mr. Giovanni Patterson says, get your kids out of that school. And how can you argue with that logic? They're not getting the job done. And it's been that way, apparently therefore, forever. And according to these people, since you can't have what a, quote, good, unquote, school has, then this school with the poor academic achievement is going to stay that way in perpetuity. It'll always be a bad school to go to. So that's my take on what ought to be have mainstream coverage, but it won't, because it doesn't fit the political narrative that they like to spout off. So that's my episode today. I hope you liked it. If you like the content, please subscribe, like, share, comment. Really appreciate you watching.